All right, well, good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to our first Henderson County webinar, Seeking Safety. It's kind of exciting to be back in the office again and having the opportunity to engage with the public and, most importantly, to bring you some significant information from the other agencies attending today. So what we really hope to share with you is a complete picture of how Pisgah Legal Services and other agencies in our community who are represented here today work in partnership and respond to the issue of domestic violence within our community. We want to give you some meaningful insight into the work that our agencies do, how we work together, and what our priorities are for the coming year. I'm delighted to be joined here today by Megan Moran, Pisgah Legal Services Family Law Attorney, Lauren Wilkie, the Executive Director of Safelight here in Henderson County, Laura Phipps. Laura is the Medical Director of Safelight's Believe Child Advocacy program, also here in Henderson County. And finally, we are joined by Sheriff Lowell Griffin of the Henderson County Sheriff's Department. So just to give you some background information, in 2020, Pisgah Legal Services helped over 20,000 people across Western North Carolina obtain access to justice. About 75% of all of our clients are women, and the average income of one of our clients is just $15,000 a year. So without access to free civil legal aid, our clients wouldn't have anywhere else to turn and very few options. In Henderson County, over 3,000 people were helped in 2020. And as you can probably imagine, the pandemic exacerbated the need significantly. In fact, people were turning to us for help who ordinarily wouldn't have needed our services. Of those 3,200 individuals, 1,300 of them were children, and over 1,400 people sought our assistance with domestic violence issues. So today, let's turn this over to, we have for the beginning of the presentation, we have a brief story of survivors, and we'd like to share that with you. And then we're going to turn this over to Megan to give us an introduction to the power and control wheel. Ben, if you'd like to get our story, thank you.
Domestic abuse is frequently hidden from others by the abuser maintaining absolute control of their victim's movements. This story is just one example of the extremes an abuser will go to hide their behavior. In Amy's words, here is her story. When I met my husband, I thought he's going to take care of me. Boy, was I wrong. About a year into the marriage, he first put his hands on me, and I'll never forget it. I was 4 months pregnant at the time, but I had made a promise to him and to God that I was going to stay with him until death do us part. So many nights I laid in bed, afraid to close my eyes. I can't explain the toll that takes on a person's life. Over the years, I left repeatedly, but he knew how to manipulate the system. He told me, I'm going to take you down one way or another. He owned guns, and I took that very seriously. He started hiding the keys and removing the batteries to the cars so that I couldn't leave. One night, after he fell asleep, I was able to get one of the keys. Weeks later, Amy's husband unexpectedly left the house. Amy saw her chance to escape, for good this time. Amy said, I had less than 10 minutes before he would get back home. I threw my clothes on as fast as I could and I ran outside. In the days leading up to this, I tried to figure out where the batteries were, and I went on YouTube to see how to put a car battery in and jumpstart it. Once she got the car running, Amy and her children raced to the courthouse. There, Amy met Olivia Williams, an attorney from Pisgah Legal Services. Amy said, I was in tears. I was trembling. Since that day, Amy has worked with Pisgah Legal to secure a protective order, custody of the children, and now a divorce. Today, Amy says, Olivia was the first person who told me what I was living in was not my fault. I've never spoken to someone who helped me like that. She gave me so much hope. I feel like God was watching over me and these children and putting people in our lives that would help us because we were suffering. Amy found the strength and the resourcefulness to escape her situation. Having access to justice through free civil legal aid has helped Amy and her children move on to a happy, healthy, and safe life, free from fear and free from the danger of domestic abuse. Domestic abuse.
So before we begin, I do have a few housekeeping notes. Throughout the presentation, if you have any questions, please go ahead and put them in the question and answer box, and we will have a Q&A session at the end where we'll get to those questions. For now, I'd like to turn it over to Megan Moran, our Pisgah Legal Services family law attorney. Okay, Megan.
Hey everyone, so today on this slide, we're going to talk a little about what's known as the power and control wheel. This is a really useful tool that we can use with our clients to sort of explain the dynamics of domestic violence. So out here on the outer part of the wheel, we've got, what people might consider the more obvious forms of domestic violence, so physical violence and sexual violence. Now on this inner part of the wheel are some other tactics that are more subversive that the abuser might use to maintain power and control over the victim, the survivor. So for example, one that we see a lot in our work is using the children. So using the children to relay messages, using visitation to harass their partner. There are some other forms of these tactics as well. So minimizing the abuse or denying the abuse or blaming the victim, using isolation. So keeping people from supportive family members, supportive friends, people that can provide the survivor with what she needs to move forward from the relationship. Using emotional abuse, so putting someone down, making them feel like, they have nowhere else to go, they are not worth safety or respect. Using intimidation, so we see this a lot in our work as well, making threats, abusing pets, destroying property, throwing things, that sort of stuff. Similarly, using coercion and threats. So again, this is something we see pretty often in our work, threatening to commit suicide, threatening to take out retaliatory charges, all of that kind of stuff. Using economic abuse is another one. So keeping the partner from the funds that they would need to be able to leave the relationship. Either not allowing them access to the funds or giving them an allowance that's so low that they couldn't be able to leave. And then also using dominance. So, that sort of patriarchal, phrases like, being the boss, being the man of the house, that kind of stuff, and reinforcing those gender stereotypes.
Okay, thank you, Megan. Now, I'd like to take a minute to introduce our panelists. So we are fortunate today to be joined by Megan, who you've just met, Lauren Wilkie, Laura Phipps, and Lowell Griffin. Our panelists are going to take turns to introduce themselves one by one and the agency that they represent. So Megan, let's start with you.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Megan Moran. I'm a staff attorney at Pisgah Legal Services. Just a little background about me. I graduated from UNC Chapel Hill in 2016 and UNC Law in 2019. So I'm a double Tar Heel, as they say. I've been active in domestic violence work for a while, and joining Pisgah Legal Services was a great place to start my career and continue my career. And I'm happy to have the chance to speak to you all about the amazing work that our organization does.
Thank you. Laura, if you'd like to introduce yourself next. You're muted, Laura.
I wasn't sure if that was Laura or Lauren. So thank you everybody for having me. My name is Laura Phipps, and I am the medical director with AdventHealth at Believe Child Advocacy Center. I have been a physician assistant in practice since 1980. However, the last 25 years of my career, I have dedicated to working with the most vulnerable of children in our community, those with sexual abuse, physical abuse, medical neglect, psychological abuse, certainly those that witness domestic violence within their home. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura. Lauren, if you'd like to go next.
Hello, I'm Lauren Wilkie. I'm the executive director here at Safelight. I have been here for 8 months, so just still settling in, learning our community. I have been practicing social work as both an advanced social worker and clinical social worker now for 15 years. And I am coming directly from Columbia, South Carolina, so I'm thrilled to come to the cooler climate. 80 degrees to me is a nice breezy spring day. So I'm loving it. And my specialty is program development, evaluation, and building community relationships so that we can work together to make systems level change.
Thank you, Lauren. And finally, Sheriff Griffin, welcome.
Hey, good morning or good afternoon. I guess we're right on the threshold. But in any case, I'm Lowell Griffin, Sheriff of Henderson County. I've been in with law enforcement just short of 30 years now. I actually started in the spring of 1992. I've been involved with the fire rescue service about 10 years longer than that. In any case, lead a tremendous group of people here at Henderson County. Over the years, I've been involved with the investigation division. I have worked numerous investigations as I was over the investigations unit. Have even had the opportunity to serve numerous ex parte and domestic violence orders in the past. So in any case, really enjoy serving the area of Henderson County, a lifelong Henderson County resident, and really appreciate the community that we have.
Well, thank you. We have a great panel today, and thank you all for just being here and participating so willingly in this today. So without further ado, we'll start with our questions. I think in terms of answering them, if we want to go in the order that we just went for introductions, does that make sense? So let's start with our first question. So can you describe the domestic violence prevention efforts that your organization participates in?
Yeah, so I'll start. Pisgah Legal has a dedicated domestic violence team who assists clients obtain protective order against their abusers, as well as assist with related family law matters. So divorces from their abusers, child custody issues involving their abusers, things like that. This allows us to really help survivors get unentangled, legally speaking, from their abusers and set clear boundaries with their abusers with legal consequences, which can be an important part of their continued safety. Then beyond our direct domestic violence and family law work, we know that domestic violence can touch so many different areas of someone's life. And so for that reason, our organization can assist survivors with the host of other legal issues. So for example, for our undocumented clients who are survivors of domestic violence, and who have assisted in the prosecution of their abuser, our immigration team may be able to help assist with a U visa application to work on a path to citizenship for the client. Beyond that, our office also has a team of social workers who can help with a variety of non-legal issues. And these additional services that sort of support our domestic violence work really help a survivor really rebuild their life in the aftermath of violence. And the hope is that this type of support can allow the survivor to thrive and live independently from their abuser.
Thank you, Megan. So Laura, if I can put the same question to you, can you describe the domestic violence prevention efforts that your organization participates in?
Absolutely. First, for those that aren't aware, our Child Advocacy Center serves as the focal point for the investigative, the advocacy, and the treatment services for children who have been exposed to any type of abuse that I just mentioned a little earlier. A point of distinction when we're working with children that I want to make is sexual abuse versus sexual assault, because I often hear those two terms used interchangeably and they mean something very different. Violence and abuse are certainly not the same. Abuse is not violent. Abuse is an uneven playing field between power and control. The intent is certainly to instill fear, and then that fear is then what controls the child. Each of our programs here at Believe Child Advocacy Center work with a multidisciplinary team with law enforcement, our Department of Social Services, and our prosecutor's office on each child abuse investigation. And I really think our best prevention efforts come every day with every child and family that we're seeing. Our advocates are working not only to address that acute crisis, but also for further prevention. The same with our forensic interviewers, our medical assessment, our forensic medical evaluations, and lastly, certainly but not least, our therapists as they're working towards the healing of that child, working with the child and the family for more prevention efforts. So that's happening multiple times on a daily basis.
Thank you, Laura. So Lauren, over to you.
So here with Safelight, we partner with over 30 community partners to make sure our survivors are linked with the right professionals and the right care. Everybody on this panel works with us and we do it together. And that's first and foremost, the most important thing to hear is it's all of us doing it. Safelight is the hub for domestic violence, sexual assault, and child abuse survivors. And I say that together because more often than not with domestic violence, you also have sexual abuse as well as child abuse. And so that's very important that that's shared. If you remember nothing else, is there's such a hand-holding togetherness of how all of this connects. You've heard about our Child Advocacy Center, but we actually have two other locations as well. We have our Family Justice Center where Megan has an on-site office with us. And we do, as well as Laura mentioned, our multidisciplinary teams with our law enforcement, our DSS, our community partners. We do that there as well every month with our adults. So we have our Child Advocacy Center for our children, and then we have our Family Justice Center for our adults, linking them into the right care and next steps they may need. We also have a 24/7 shelter and hotline, which any of our survivors can access 24/7. Any day of the week. And so it's really important that we make sure that we have the availability to get those who are in crisis to what they need next. Our shelter is currently 40 beds. We just got a grant to add another room. So by July, we'll have 42 beds. We did renovations over the winter for our downstairs area to increase an additional 16-bed emergency space if we need to do a pop-up for the community. We have access to do that. We have as well our job training center, and as part of that we have our cafe, Dandelion, our resale store, and our sewing program where folks in the community can purchase different items that we create and be part of supporting giving back to Safelight. And we have, which I'll talk to in more detail, our prevention efforts, our education and advocacy, which we'll talk more about later, some of those classes and trainings and what that looks like so that we could get in front of the violence and help do more prevention efforts before it gets going.
Thank you, Lauren. So Sheriff Griffin, same to you.
Well, law enforcement traditionally has been kind of a reactive entity. It's really difficult to forecast those that are going to commit a criminal act. However, with domestic violence, we try to be as proactive as we can. We are typically the first line of defense when someone is in distress. And understand this, and I'm glad this has been mentioned, because domestic violence doesn't just affect females, it affects families. We're talking about the effects, and I can give you just over the past few minutes cases that have come in today where it's adversely affected children and what they witness. So when that 911 call comes in, we immediately respond. We're going to respond whether it's something that the 911 operator is obtaining information and it's some sort of heated disturbance, or even if somebody calls back to say, look, we were mistaken, an officer's no longer needed, we're going. When we're there, we try to be aggressive in our investigations. I've got tremendous men and women out there, and they're really going to try to figure out what's going on, what the root of the problem is. And it becomes really difficult when you're talking about being in someone else's home at all hours of the day and night, in really probably an atmosphere that's more emotionally heated than most people can even imagine, to get straight answers and to try to understand what's going on in the moment is difficult at best. But these folks do their best to try to figure out, is there actually criminal activity such as assault or abuse, something that we can actually make an arrest on? Is there something going on there? If not, is there any way that we can separate parties for the night, for the day, to try to ensure their safety? We hand out information, especially to those that, even though there may not be elements that fit a crime there, we can generally figure out who may be a victim, and we try to hand out information. And this goes right back to a tremendous partnership, which I'll speak to in the next question, with the Family Justice Center, and how folks can seek help, how they can seek counseling, what their rights are. A lot of moving parts. We now have investigators assigned to each shift. So instead of waiting just, for the day shift investigator to come in, should there be criminal activity or something that needs to be looked into further, we have investigators on staff 24/7. And we have a lot of programs. We subscribe to the North Carolina Savon program, which basically is a notification program for victims that can notify them of where a violator may be in the criminal justice process, to include, say, they're released from jail. We serve all the domestic violence protection orders. It doesn't matter if it's in any city, it doesn't matter where it's at. That's actually a civil order, and that comes through the office of the sheriff. So as we speak, I have folks, this county has grown, to the level that I have folks answering 911 calls for domestics, and I have a separate group of folks that specialize, that are out serving these domestic violence protection orders. I also have a tremendous staff, both a person that specializes in working with the Latino community, and another that act as victim. I don't want to say victim advocates, but they contact our victims on a regular basis, or those that are perceived as victims, to do follow-up calls to see how they're coping, and they will assist these folks in getting the help they need and continuing to encourage them to get the help they need. So a lot of moving parts going on within the sheriff's office as we work with our community partners and in trying to help these folks.
Thank you. Thank you. So moving on to question 2, how does partnering with other agencies help with preventing forms of violence in the community? We'll start with you, Megan.
Yeah, so our organization works closely with all of the agencies that are here today, as well as other local organizations. And my relationship with Safelight in particular, as well as the Sheriff's Office and the Child Advocacy Center, is a bit unique because, as Lauren mentioned, I am staffed in the Henderson County Family Justice Center. And for me, that is an amazing resource for our community members. It's really like a one-stop shop for people who need help. So, rather than having to drive all over town to access different resources, they can go one place. They know who's going to be there, and they can access the support that they need. In addition to being staffed there and the benefits of the Family Justice Center just existing, we're able to do some really important information sharing. So obviously, as attorneys, we have to maintain the utmost standards of client confidentiality, attorney-client privilege. But when we have the appropriate releases of information from our clients, we're able to share certain information with our community partners, and that helps us really provide wraparound services for our clients and coordinate with our agencies to really address the client's needs in the best way possible. We're also able to meet pretty regularly and assess and address more systemic needs in our community. So not just, on the individual level, but more on a macro level. And having these partnerships has been crucial to the prevention efforts that Pisgah has been a part of.
Thanks, Megan. Over to you, Laura.
So not to certainly echo some of what Megan has said and what Lauren has previously said, I feel like I've got the best job in the world because I work for the hospital, who I've worked in this field for 25 years as part of AdventHealth, but I'm located here full-time at the Child Advocacy Center. A Child Advocacy Center, we can't respond and do the work we do unless the multidisciplinary partners are here at the same time. So they are here. So with each child abuse investigation that's initiated, the Sheriff's Office detective or the police department's detective is here because they are part of staffing that case initially, watching the interview, getting the results of the medical exam, making recommendations. The same with Henderson County Department of Social Services. Cases are staffed with the district attorney's office. Every day we have to have that team here, because if we didn't, and the goal of a Child Advocacy Center is to have all those services under one roof at the same time. Life before we had a Child Advocacy Center, a child and their non-offending parent could go anywhere from 4 to 7 different locations to all of those places. It was certainly a system that was just re-traumatizing the child and the non-offending family members. So that's the goal of this Child Advocacy Center since 2015. We've been going strong and collaborating with more and more partners every day. As Megan said, here at the Child Advocacy Center, internally we staff our cases every week. And then once a month, our entire multidisciplinary team comes together, either at the Sheriff's Office or DSS, where the investigator that was on that assigned case, the social worker, anybody that's involved, we come together and we talk about those cases and where are we at, so that there is hopefully less of a chance of something falling through the cracks, with the goal of always making it seamless and being sure no need goes unattended.
Thank you, Laura. Okay, Lauren.
So for us, everybody gets to play with us on our playground. like I said, as a community social worker and a community-based organization, we all do it together. And everyone has shared space. We have a lot of grants together, contracts together. I have over 23 memorandums of understanding with different organizations locally that we work with to make it happen. 3 of those are here today. And you heard in depth about from Laura, our Child Advocacy Center efforts. You heard in depth from Megan about our Family Justice Center, and the sheriff's going to tell you more about that. So I'm going to just tell you a little bit of the others and let them have that spotlight. So we also have LifeWorks on site. So as folks are finishing out our job training center, they get linked into there for their forever jobs. We have 8 housing units with First United Methodist Church that as we're finishing folks out of shelter, we get to house people there for their forever homes. They're full now, so we're looking for more units. If anyone in the community wants to build more, I'd love to make an MOU and have additional partners. We also have an on-site office at DSS, which we're at regularly, and making sure all of our clients are communicated well and are linked into care. So when I say this is a community effort, it really is. I will let you know that right now we are looking and hopefully able to find a new location for our Child Advocacy Center next year. We're trying to grow and have more community office space available in that area. And if we can find one big enough, we hope to merge the Family Justice Center and Child Advocacy Center under one roof to even make it easier for our clients to access services under one location. So that's a goal that we're looking at. And hopefully that'll be something that we can achieve by next year. I'll also let you know with our CARES Act funding, we built into our lobby of our main facility a shared community office space. So any community partner has an on-site office that they can pop up shop and meet with clients together. So for us, it's just meaningful to make sure that we are all have safe, confidential working spaces to be able to do it all together.
Thank you, Lauren. And over to you, Sheriff Griffin.
Well, I think they've pretty much covered the gamut. But in any case, I'm going to tell you, there's no way one person or one entity can be, jack of all trades and master of all trades. And our community partners, when we refer people to Pisgah Legal, we refer people to the Family Justice Center on a regular basis. We have a tremendous working relationship with the Believe Child Advocacy Center. Just a caveat, when we have children either as victims of crimes or even as witnesses to serious crimes, interviewing children to get the truth and not traumatize that child takes a really special skill set. And that's where it's called a forensic interview. And that's where we rely on. I call her Dr. Phipps. That's where we rely on her heavily. And she is just thought of so highly throughout the sheriff's office, as is all of our partners. Lauren, she was in our office just a week or 2 ago. She brought us cookies, as she said in a meeting with us. So what happens is we can have a strong sheriff's office, and I think we do. I've got tremendous men and women. But without these partners, we couldn't achieve what we're able to achieve today. So having this working partnership, sharing this information, having these folks that are specialists in their field that actually care and want to follow up, it really shows what a tremendous place Henderson County is.
Thank you for that. Megan, you might want to up your game and take some cookies over there. All right. So
Any line with that. They made the cookies. I just made the ask.
Nice. Love it. Okay. So question 3. We're going to switch gears a little bit here. So can you talk about how COVID-19 has impacted the people that you serve? Maybe what's different? What's changed? Go ahead, Megan.
Yeah, so especially at the beginning of the pandemic, we generally saw an increase in not only domestic violence, but also the severity of the domestic violence. So how lethal, for example, the domestic violence was. We have there is what's called a lethality assessment, where certain forms of violence are more correlated with homicide. And we were seeing sort of some of those types of violence more frequently. And with people being stuck at home with their abusers, maybe losing their job, losing childcare, it became harder for them to access services. Also our community and even Pisgah ourselves had to really rise up to the challenge of serving this community in a safe and healthy way with this pandemic coming to bear, and specifically related to some new things that we saw in the family law field. There were some new issues that arose. We saw a lot of, for example, in the child custody realm, abusers using the pandemic and COVID-19 as an excuse to withhold the children or not exchange the children at agreed upon times. We also saw issues with abusers withholding stimulus money after inappropriately claiming the children as dependents, and families really needing that in these difficult times to continue to provide for their children. And on a more general level, our courthouses were also responding to this pandemic. There were pauses on divorces and child custody cases for a period of time, which meant that survivors couldn't address these issues in as timely of a manner as maybe they would like. So there were certainly some new challenges, but I think all of our partner agencies really rose to that challenge, and I think Pisgah did as well.
Thank you, Megan. And that one over to you, Laura.
So certainly during any type of national emergency or natural disaster, the incidence of child abuse does rise. Our children during this pandemic have been at significant increased risk. They have been isolated. They've been away from the watchful eyes of the people that protect them, often the only people that protect them, their school resource officer, their guidance counselor, their teachers, maybe even their friends. Our families at the same time, along with our children being so isolated, our families have been faced with crises some of them had never experienced before: loss of job, loss of wages, not enough food in the home, evictions, foreclosures on their homes. It's been a challenge all around. I will tell you that in 2020, some states reported upwards of 70% of fewer child abuse reports to their hotline. It didn't certainly mean that the abuse wasn't happening. The abuse was continuing, it just wasn't being reported. So as a result, the emergency rooms around the country saw about 25% in 2020 fewer emergency department visits as it relates to some type of inflicted child injury. However, when these kiddos were seen, a larger number required hospitalization because the abuse had been going on so much longer and had gone unnoticed and unreported. Our parents have had less social support, less financial support. We know the increased risk of the rise of mental illness in our caretakers, and certainly substance abuse, including alcohol abuse. And almost 25% of parents reported, those that never used any type of physical discipline before, increased 25% using physical discipline for their children.
Those are some staggering numbers, Laura, really. Over to you, Lauren.
I'll echo Laura. Across the board with our services, when things closed, our numbers dropped and then spiked after, which is again why we got ahead and planned for if we have an additional spike of people who are now willing to leave all at the same time. Because you have to remember, you may be fearful in a violent relationship, but you may fear COVID more. And so beside not being able to be seen, it's just that fear of leaving and the unknown of COVID. So we expect to see a huge spike as things are starting to get back to the new normal. I just want to take a moment to say for us and for our services, how all of us have been affected, as well as our clients, my staff, myself, all of us, you as well. I even think about my toddler having less social interactions and how everyone has had trauma from what has happened. And us recognizing as trauma-informed care specialists and mental health experts, what that's going to mean for our community as a whole is an important fact for us to first recognize. For us in-house, we've had to do a lot extra self-care and tweak services. We are first responders. We can't close. We are still here. So that fear, especially as there was so much unknown and continues to be unknown, we have to be here regardless. We were able, with our partners in AdventHealth, we did 2 pop-up vaccine clinics at Dandelion Cafe, where staff and our clients were able to get the vaccines if they hadn't already. And that was very well received and very helpful for our community to reduce some of that fear. And so we are thrilled that for the most part, those who have wanted to get a vaccine have all had it. And we're thrilled to have that partnership. I'll as well say, we have part of our revenue stream, the income that's generated through the cafe and store, which were closed for 4 months. That caused for our fiscal year, 2 of our quarters were at a loss. So even when we had some grants to make up for the difference, some of those general operating monies were really cut and hit hard in the sum of about $200 and something thousand. So for us as an agency, it was just a financial hit, which is also a stress addition to us as a staff. We had to retweak a lot of our services and look at them differently. Our shelter had to go to 1 room per family or individual to help reduce some of the risk. We have not had any outbreaks of COVID. We've had some isolated instances with staff, none for clients, no spreading. So we're thrilled as an agency that our policy and procedures have kept us safe and from having the COVID virus spread throughout us, which is wonderful and we're thrilled about. We did switch some of our services for counseling to telehealth, which was a great learning curve for us as our 6 licensed North Carolina therapists switched to be able to provide. They did some walk and talk in the parks for outdoor with children, and then we did telehealth for those, which will continue to do and have received a grant that we're going to really tweak and improve our software. But that's really something that's helped some of our rural clients really access individual therapy. And our support groups are continuing to be right now through virtual platforms. But we do hope to move some of those back on site as we can. But we now have the option and the training to do them virtually, which is an added bonus and a great thing that we've learned as an agency. But it's been a rough ride of a year, but we're starting to see the end of it.
Right. Yeah, true. It has been an education, I think. And I think having the ability within our organizations to make those pivots, to be nimble enough to do that is what has really made all the difference. I know from our perspective at Pisgah Legal Services, we switched to remote work. We put up bilingual applications on our website. And it's incredible, though, that how technology, virtual technology has really made a significant difference. It was there all along. We've just learned to harness it better, to use it, to continue doing our work. So that's pretty interesting. All right, Sheriff Griffin, over to you on that question.
Well, that's a really complex question. And what I will say is we really weren't able to switch anything to remote. Our folks were still, they still had to walk into the same emotionally charged atmospheres. These 911 calls, just as Megan had said, they increased. They did not decrease. So not only were we faced with trying to keep our folks safe from the COVID pandemic, we were faced at the same time with an increase in calls, especially when you're talking about domestic disturbances. And, you can read the different articles, and just like everyone has said, as we looked at it, from the children not getting the care that they needed, studies have shown that throughout the pandemic, that instances of substance dependency and substance abuse actually grew. And so many of these domestic violence incidents and child abuse incidents, and so many come as a direct result of some sort of substance abuse. So that kind of goes hand in hand with what we saw. But through it all, we were able to navigate it. I'm really praying we're on the downhill side of this pandemic now. But through it all, and again, with the strong partnership of these other folks that we've got around us, especially these three that you're talking to today, we've been able to navigate this. We've been able to get through it, but we haven't been able to cut the lights off and stay at home and stay away from this. We've been right in the middle of it.
Thank you, Sheriff Griffin. So that moves us on to our last question for panelists today. We're going to talk a little bit about, what we foresee in the future. So what are your advocacy goals or priorities for the coming year, and how do you plan on accomplishing those?
So I know for our domestic violence team, our goals is to continue to increase our capacity to serve and holistically serve as many clients in our community as possible. So not only to assist with a siloed legal issue like a protective order, but also to address these additional concerns that clients may have about housing, applying for benefits, immigration issues, all of those types of things that are really important to, stabilizing and really rebuilding in the aftermath of violence. So continuing to do that, continuing to work with our partner agencies, continuing to grow our relationships with local organizations, continuing to grow the Family Justice Center and the strength of the Family Justice Center with our partner agencies. And continue to serve clients in the ways that, in creative ways, and in ways that best support their needs. So, as folks have mentioned before, now that we know that, we can do some of this remote work, sometimes that can be more convenient for clients to have, phone calls rather than coming in person. So, I think this experience of the pandemic has really allowed us to try out new ways to serve our clients and brainstorm creative ways about how to meet those needs. So continuing to do that is going to be crucial for us going forward.
So I'm just going to
Laura,
go
over
to
to you.
Deborah. So certainly for myself, I would speak for my colleagues that are on this webinar today. And for those that I work with at AdventHealth, it would be a dream to think we could put ourselves out of a job, because our prevention efforts have done such just great work. But as Sheriff Griffin accurately stated, child abuse itself it's a multifaceted problem. The health of our community in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years is determined by what we are able to do for our children today. We know that the body, time does not heal, time conceals. So our best efforts, child abuse, as I mentioned, as Sheriff Griffin meant, is a multifaceted problem. As long as we have substance abuse in our community, as long as we have untreated mental illness, lack of access to mental health services, as long as we have domestic violence, we're not going to see, unfortunately, an end to child abuse. I know AdventHealth is committed to getting to a stronger partnership within the field of working with Safelight and here at the Child Advocacy Center. I'm sad to say that all of our hair is on fire here at the Child Advocacy Center. We need more help, including from a medical aspect, and certainly Lauren and myself and AdventHealth and other leadership members in the community are working very hard at getting us some additional help. The center that we're in right now, and Lauren is in active search for a new building, we outgrew it 3 years ago. So when I have a family, we had 5 kiddos in yesterday, and it ended up taking us about 13 hours to take care of all those kiddos. We can't service more than one at a time because of our space, because of our staffing. So, you know, the good news is Lauren is doing outstanding work with AdventHealth and with our other partners to be sure that we're getting the grants, the money, the support that we need to be able to support even more efficiently our children and our families here at the Child Advocacy Center.
So, Lauren, I see we've got a raised hand there.
Do I?
You
I
did?
hit it by accident.
Hey.
Sorry about that. Wrong button.
I did. So over to you. Same question.
So one of the biggest things I did new in the community is really meet with all of our partners, see where the gaps were, what we needed next. And now I'm sort of touring and talking to see what new partners need to be at our table and working with us with different groups. Just this week, I've toured and talked with 3 different agencies to kind of see what they're doing and how we can help. And also meeting with our similar programs. I was with Buncombe County's FJC yesterday, touring and talking as we're looking at a new building. What do you have that we could copy? Like, what do we need? What did you not think of that we should add? And so we have 3 more tours coming in the next month around the state to see, as we've identified who was sort of the reputation of being the best, that we could really look at to see how we could copy and do some of those things too. So there's a constant look at where are our community gaps and how can we help fill those. I have, as our agency has 1.5 million in grant requests out right now to see how we can fill some of those gaps. So fingers crossed as we're looking at those new monies to make things happen. One of those is hiring a specialty outreach community and education person that could really be on site and do that with us, and that be their sole role. We have a lot of curriculums we do with a partnership with Mediation Center. We do some trainings. We do with the Henderson County School System, the Second Step training for Safe Touch. We do with community partners, the Darkness to Light empirical based training, which really teaches how to recognize and react to sexual abuse survivors and make sure that we get them into the right care. And then of course we do a lot of community education and talks and engagements. Actually just jumped off one for Western North Carolina police officers 5 minutes before this call. So just continuing education, talks, community engagement is something we want to continue to see ongoing, and identify what ones we're not doing in the community that we need to bring here and do also. So we're analyzing and looking at that. And so hopefully next year, as we're able to open up and do more together, you'll have a lot more invites to do some of those. We'll try to make some of those have continuing education credits for those who have different licenses. So you're not only just learning, but you're getting credits to keep your license going. So looking at ways we can really make sure the community is part of that knowledge and knows how to refer and get to at least the first step to help a survivor, which again is our hotline number, which I'll throw in the chat, is the best first step for you to use. And so just continuing education for prevention is a main source of, let's stop the violence before it happens.
Yeah, good point. Thank you, Lauren. Okay, Sheriff Griffin, over to you.
Well, the biggest thing, and it's just like some of them have identified, especially Dr. Phipps, is that we are growing. This area is growing so fast. Depending on which entity you hear from, what article you look at, some are even describing us as an urban community, an urban county now versus a rural county that we were not long ago. And even those that describe us as a rural county are putting us at that top level. So as we continue to grow, our resources are going to have to continue to grow, or we're simply not going to be able to keep up. I look at the caseloads that my detectives have. I look at the number of calls that the officers respond to, and I just now while I was waiting, checked the dispatch screen, and I can tell you that deputies right now are on 9 different law enforcement calls just in the county. That doesn't include the cities. That's just in the county, to include a domestic disturbance, and that's usually the norm. So the biggest thing that I have to advocate for is an increase in patrol personnel, and I've actually asked our commission for that. What we run into is we have folks, especially when it gets super busy, that they respond to domestic disturbances. And to be quite honest with you, their time there sometimes is limited, where they could probably go a little farther in depth and do a little more follow-up, because there are other domestic disturbances that are pending, and they have to clear one to go to the next. And not sure if you've noticed, if it's just me, but it looks like since the pandemic has eased up, that traffic is back with a vengeance. So navigating traffic from one end of the county to the other is becoming increasingly difficult. So having that increase in personnel, that would make a tremendous difference. I believe that's the number one difference we could make in being able to provide those services to families.
Yeah, good points. All right, everybody. So we have reached the end of our question and answer. Excuse me. Let me get my teeth in here. We have reached the end of our moderated questions. We're going to move on just to our question and answer session. So one of the questions is from Clint Holt in the Q&A, and Clint asks, what are the typical things that cause an abuser to become an abuser, and how do you address the base causes? So who may like to take that question? Lauren, no, are you going to take that? Who?
That was Laura.
Laura, okay, go ahead.
I'm so
Laura.
sorry, Lauren. So Clint, thank you for that question. That's a great question, and I'm going to let Lauren address. She's the expert from the adult side. But so let me say this, and what I'd like to be sure that I've made clear, that child abuse is a multifaceted problem. For the most part, I would tell you in my years of experience, a parent is not thinking at their highest level of consciousness, I'm going to abuse and hurt my child today. That is my goal, to abuse, torture, sometimes even kill my child. There's underlying what's going on in the home. So we look at substance abuse, and we've all talked about it. The drug use in our community is just astronomical. There are efforts being made between the Sheriff's Office and Hope Coalition and Safelight and myself to have a drug endangered children's task force. So substance abuse is a real big problem. Parents are impaired, domestic violence, untreated mental illness. We saw last week, and we see this day in and day out here, we saw last week that a mother stabbed to death in Henderson County her 5-year-old child. We had a case in the other day there, a mother told her 13-year-old to line up the 3 younger siblings she was going to stab them. Her boyfriend said he was going to beat them in the head with a hammer. There's mental illness, there's substance abuse. We have to be able to get to the bottom. We have to be able to make an impact, and we are. So I hope that's been somewhat helpful. The other thing that we look at too is when I'm doing an intake and assessment, a psychosocial risk assessment on our parents that come in, what was their life like? Mom, when you were growing up, do you remember ever seeing drugs used by your parents? Or did they fight? Or Mom, were you ever exposed to some type of abuse yourself? And, it's almost when these parents walk in with their children initially, we can almost guess, okay, we've got this summed up before we can even, ask them all these questions. So my statement, again, I'll go back to child abuse is it's a multifaceted problem.
And if I can, I'll echo that. It's diverse. Every situation and what we're seeing and what's happened, it could be a one and done occurrence. It could be someone's first relationship that this is happening in. It could be multiple relationships that this has been happening, or it can be generational and cyclic. So there's not a single profile for victims or perpetrators, but there are some trends. And Laura hit the nail on the head. For us being trauma informed, we have to know that there is, if not a dual diagnosis, there is almost always mental health, trauma, and substance abuse at play as part of this. And then I have to swing back and point out again what Megan went over for violators: power and control. This is not anger management. It's bigger than that. It is about power and control and trapping someone, feeling entitled. And most importantly, it's a learned behavior. We see others do it. We believe this is love. We believe it's okay. And so it's a community problem. We have too many people in our community being hurt. There's too many issues of suicide and homicide that are based on this violence. We have to break the cycle together.
And, if I could just address the question about, undocumented folks and how that sort of relates to reporting of abuse. I know for a lot of our clients, abusers often use the victim's immigration status as a way to prevent them from reporting the abuse. So rather than, fearing that the abuser is going to get deported, a lot of times it is the fear of the victim that they are going to get deported. Additionally, there was some fear about even going to the courthouse previously for fear of being detained by ICE. Now, I know the Biden administration very recently released a directive that's going to limit the ability of ICE to do that. But, that's a very real and common issue that we see with our undocumented clients. And again, like Lauren said, this is part of a power and control tactic, is to use whatever the abuser can to keep the victim from moving from the relationship. So sort of to address that question more directly.
Yeah.
And one thing, if I can add, what I'll also say on top of what Megan said is what we have found over the years, and what I have found personally, is one reason that we have a community advocate in here to try to work with the Latino community, especially because of our large population, and reduce this violence is to try to quell some of those fears, especially the unfounded fears. The second thing is understand that not there are parts of the world that don't view domestic violence as we do. There are parts of the world, there are cultures where a woman is owned, where there are no penalties for domestic violence, where this is socially accepted behavior. And through different forms of education and working with other community groups, that's one thing that we want to relay. While we will not tolerate that, regardless of the culture, that needs to be stressed through education, that we are not the rest of the world, and this is not socially accepted behavior here whatsoever.
I'd say well said, Sheriff Griffin. Thank you. Just while we've got all our viewers watching, are there any more questions for the Q&A session? We had a couple, but we've got a couple of minutes to answer any more if anyone has anything to add. And I'm not seeing anything coming up. So first of all, I want to thank our panelists and viewers for attending today, particularly our panelists. And I just thank you for the in-depth responses, for the thoughtful responses that you have shared with everybody today. It is, what we are doing is such important work, and it's so necessary within our community. I truly believe that the more knowledge that we have, the more light that we can shine on these issues, the more that we can become better as a community, in terms of talking about it and addressing it. We have a greater chance for those who are suffering in silence to know that it's okay to reach out, because they know and are fully aware that there is an army of people out here ready to support them, who've got their back, who are ready to go to bat for them. So again, guys, thank you so much for participating. It's such valuable information that you have shared today. If anybody who is a viewer today is interested in speaking with me further, or receiving further information from myself, are we still on? Okay, sorry about that. I got thrown by the change of screen. So if anybody's interested in speaking with me more about what they've learned, or interested in helping us to further the work that we do, please reach out to me, Deborah at pisgahlegal.org. At Pisgah Legal Services, we have many ways to participate: through volunteering, through maybe a gift toward our work, or maybe even helping us to organize a presentation or a speaking engagement with a social group or a civic organization that you might be involved with. We would be happy to help you get that going and set it up. Meanwhile, thank you again to everybody. Thanks to our participants, thanks to our viewers, and we look forward to the next Henderson County Community Lunch and Learn, which we anticipate will be sometime in the next 3 months. So thanks everybody, appreciate you joining us. Take care and have a great day.